Hello, Namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. When Donald Trump became president for the second time, India put its best foot forward. Prime Minister Modi visited Washington within days of Trump's inauguration. But over the past few months, it's been a difficult relationship. First, the trade war, then the false claims on ceasefire between India and Pakistan, and in between the statements from Trump's team. They betray disrespect for partners and an utter lack of understanding of the world. Tonight, we look at why Trump's team is rubbing everyone the wrong way. When you put your golf buddies in charge of diplomatic missions, I guess this is what you get. Meanwhile, Russia is looking to make the most of it. It is offering the latest Su-57 jets to India and sweetening the deal with a Desi twist. We'll discuss what that means. Also, how China is wooing India, but also targeting the Make in India story. How American companies may suffer because of the trade war, but Trump businesses are booming. Why Taiwan is set to test a kamikaze sea drone, how twin terror attacks in Mali have left dozens of people dead, AI is changing the way we search, is ChatGPT the new Google? What does India's COVID surge mean for you? What is Boomerang Hiring? And how designer handbags forced Mongolia's Prime Minister to resign. All this and more coming up. The headlines first. The White House says Donald Trump and Xi Jinping could talk soon. This comes amid growing tensions between the US and China. Reports suggest the two leaders will speak one-on-one, especially on trade restrictions for critical minerals. Beijing is yet to comment on this. Millions vote in South Korea's snap elections. It was triggered by former President Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment. Exit polls project a win for opposition candidate Lee Jae-myung. Lee is expected to win by a landslide with more than 50% of the vote. Dutch Prime Minister Dick Schoof resigns. This comes hours after the collapse of the government. Far-right leader Geert Wilders walked out of the coalition, demanding tougher action on immigration. Schoof will remain in caretaker capacity until fresh elections. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz defends his migration crackdown. He says it is vital to protect public safety. This comes after a court ruled that one of his flagship policies was illegal. The Berlin court says German border officials cannot turn away asylum seekers. And more than 200 inmates escape a jail after an earthquake in Pakistan's Karachi. Thousands of inmates broke out of their cells. The frenzy turned violent as police fired into the air, killing one prisoner. 80 inmates have been recaptured, while more than 100 remain at large. Two things matter in diplomacy: words and wisdom. You can't just bulldoze your way through the world, especially not this multipolar world. You need to choose your words carefully. You need wisdom to respond to situations, and both are lacking in Donald Trump's administration. Let me show you the latest example of that. Trump's Commerce Secretary, basically the US Commerce Minister, is targeting India. His name is Howard Lutnick. And he says India is rubbing America the wrong way. How? Listen to what he said.
There were certain things that the Indian government did that generally rubbed the United States the wrong way. For instance, you generally buy your military gear from Russia. That's a way to kind of get up, under the skin of America if you're going to buy your armaments from Russia. Being a part of BRICS. Yep. Right? Which is, let's move to not support the dollar and dollar hegemony. That's not really the way to make friends and influence people in America. So, the president calls that out directly and specifically.
So two main complaints: A, that India buys weapons from Russia, and B, that India is part of BRICS. Lutnick claims that these two things will put off Americans. He also says that Trump is calling India out. Over what exactly? It's not like we are secretly smuggling Russian weapons into India. We are proud of our defense ties with Russia. And same with BRICS. This is not some diplomatic cabal. The BRICS meets in broad daylight for the whole world to see. So what exactly is Trump calling out? Perhaps his own ignorance. Because the US president does not even know who the BRICS members are.
Spain is very low. And yet, are they a BRICS nation?
What?
They're a BRICS nation, Spain. You know what a BRICS nation is? You'll figure it out.
And this sums up the problem. Ignorance combined with arrogance. The US has always had a Cold War mentality. You're with us or against us. That attitude was slowly changing in the last decade. We saw successive presidents reach out to India. Donald Trump himself was part of that change. In 2018, India bought Russia's S-400 air defense system. That deal could have triggered sanctions on India, because the US has a law called CATSA, Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act, CATSA. The law says if you buy weapons from American rivals, you will be sanctioned. But Donald Trump never sanctioned India, nor did his successor, Joe Biden. Yes, they had issues with India's Russian deals, but they understood the context, or at least they pretended to understand. In Trump 2.0, that appears to be gone. The president keeps calling India a tariff king. He keeps claiming credit for the India-Pakistan ceasefire.
They've had that fight for 1,000 years in Kashmir. Kashmir's been going on for 1,000 years, probably longer than that.
On Saturday, my administration helped broker a full and immediate ceasefire. Just days ago, my administration successfully brokered a historic ceasefire to stop the escalating violence between India and Pakistan. I don't want to say I did, but I sure as hell helped settle the problem between Pakistan and India last week.
He keeps saying it at every opportunity, and his officials say that India is rubbing America the wrong way. What do you think is the issue here? Well, the team itself is a problem, Trump's team. Consider Secretary Howard Lutnick. All his life, he's worked on Wall Street, but in 2024, he was parachuted into the Trump campaign. No political experience, no foreign policy chops. Then you have Vice President J.D. Vance. Again, very little political experience. Even less so on foreign policy. Remember what happened during Operation Sindoor. J.D. Vance said it was none of his business. He said the US would not try to get involved, but days later, he was frantically calling Indian officials. Then you have Tulsi Gabbard, the Director of National Intelligence. After the Pahalgam attack, she supported India. But after Operation Sindoor, radio silence. Not a single comment on India or Pakistan. In fact, some experts say that she has been sidelined. Then there's Steve Witkoff, envoy for anything under the sun. He has no foreign policy experience. He was Trump's golf buddy before taking this role. Plus, he has stakes in Pakistan. Witkoff and his sons co-own a crypto company. The same company signed a deal with Pakistan this year. Frankly, the only diplomat in the room is Marco Rubio. Until recently, you also had National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, but he resigned after the Signal chat row. So the seasoned diplomats are all gone. Those who remain are inexperienced yes men, and it shows. Trump still hasn't named an ambassador to India. In the meantime, his officials are targeting New Delhi. Like I said, the team is a problem because this relationship is nuanced. It's not a treaty relationship. It's not a military alliance. It's a mutually beneficial partnership. It is based on mutual respect and interests. You need wisdom to understand that. Just look at the aftermath of Operation Sindoor. We used BrahMos missiles to hit Pakistan. We used Russian fighter jets to fire missiles. We also used Russian S-400s to protect our skies. But our enemy was using American F-16s. Yet Donald Trump's officials say India is rubbing them the wrong way. If anything, it's the other way around. Trump himself is cozying up to Putin. He says he wants to sign a minerals deal with Russia, but he wants India to diversify and to move away from Russia. This is classic hypocrisy, and it's also dangerous. India and the US have taken decades to build trust. Leaders, including Trump, have invested in this relationship. It wasn't always organic or natural. It was shaped by the political will of leaders. Trump 1.0 displayed that will. Trump 2.0 has not. I know the US president likes taking the chainsaw to political issues, but I'm afraid that won't work with India. If he isn't careful, he could undo decades of hard work. And staying on the topic, here's why India buys so many weapons from Russia. Because Moscow has some good offers. Their latest is fighter jets. Specifically, Russia's Su-57 fighter. This is a plane. It's a fifth-generation fighter jet. It is a contemporary of America's F-35 and China's J-20. Trump is keen to sell the F-35 to India, which is why Russia is sweetening the deal. They're not selling the jets off the rack to India. They are giving a so-called desi twist. What does that mean? For starters, these jets could carry Indian-made missiles, meaning less foreign reliance. We can fit Indian missiles on the Su-57. Secondly, Russia is reportedly open to technology transfer. Now, as you know, a fighter jet is a complicated machine. Only the designer and manufacturer know how to maintain, repair, and operate it. But Russia could share some of that knowledge with us. Again, that means less reliance on others. And finally, co-production. Russia is apparently open to making the jets with an Indian company, even private sector ones. If that happens, it will create jobs in India. The question is, will New Delhi take up this offer? Our long-term goal is to build a homegrown stealth jet. In fact, that project was approved only last month. The first prototype is expected to be ready by late 2029. The jets will be inducted only in 2035. And that is the issue. China has already deployed fifth-generation jets. Reports say they could sell these planes to Pakistan as well. If that is the case, India needs a temporary fix. Enter Russia's Su-57. It is just half the cost of the F-35, plus you get technology transfer and Indian missiles. But what about the quality? Well, this is where things get interesting. The F-35 is the more widely deployed fighter jet. The US has produced more than 1,000 of these planes. And the Su-57? Only 42 planes have been made. Russia needs money to crank up production, hence the sweetened deal to India. Now, if you think about it, things have come a full circle. Because the Su-57 was supposed to be a joint project. India and Russia signed the agreement in 2007. They were supposed to build it together. But in 2018, New Delhi pulled out. The project was taking too long to implement. Plus, Russia was reluctant to share some of the technology. As a result, India walked out. 7 years later, both sides could be back together. Of course, a lot has changed in this time. Russia is at war right now. Their first priority will be fighting Ukraine. So can they spare the resources for India? Of late, they've not been able to do that. Some deliveries of the S-400 system have been delayed. India bought 5 of these systems in 2018, 5 S-400 systems. 3 have been delivered so far, and the rest, Russian officials in India say they could be delivered by late 2025 or 2026.
We heard about that the S-400 was performed very efficiently during the recent situation between India and Pakistan. To my knowledge, the contract for the delivery of the remaining S-400 units is going to happen according to the schedule. I think it's 2025, 2026.
Delays are a major concern, but so is over-reliance. In 2009, Russia made up 76% of India's arms imports. By 2024, that was down to just 36%. India now buys a lot more from the US, France, and Israel, and this is not about abandoning Russia, this is about diversifying, about getting the best deals, which is also why India buys 38% of its oil from Russia. That too is diversification. Now, coming back to the fighter jets, India will have to keep three things in mind. Number one, time. China is fast-tracking the delivery of its jets to Pakistan. They could be handed over by late 2025, that is later this year, or early next year. In which case, India will have to take a decision soon. We saw last month that air power is key to taking on Pakistan. So India must be prepared, and that is the first factor. Factor number two, Russia's capabilities. Yes, they have offered a sweet deal, but don't forget why the deal is so sweet. Because Russia needs this more than India does. And finally, factor number three, America's reliability. Some Western countries are worried about a kill switch on the F-35. What's a kill switch? It's a function that could deactivate or limit the plane's abilities. Reports say the US has a kill switch on the F-35, and if that's true, it's a worrying idea. Also, the US is very cagey about their planes, so tech transfer or co-production will be a tough sell. For India, this won't be an easy choice to make, but when it comes to national security, it really is. So Russia is offering India better defense deals. China too wants a slice of the Indian market. It has been pushing for greater access. It wants fewer restrictions. It wants faster approvals and easy entry for its companies, for Chinese companies to enter India. And on that front, India has taken some steps. More Chinese FDI projects are being cleared. The government of India has set up an inter-ministerial committee. All major government ministries are represented in this committee. This committee meets regularly. It reviews Chinese investment proposals, and this is the committee that clears the projects. Reports say the process has been streamlined, proposals are moving faster, backlogs have been reduced, the approval window is shorter. This is a shift from the post-Galwan era. Back in 2020, India had tightened checks on Chinese investments, and for good reason. There were border clashes in Galwan, unprovoked hostility from China. That had upset bilateral ties, so it couldn't be business as usual. Thousands of Chinese troops were challenging Indian sovereignty on the border, and that standoff went on for 4 years. Last year, both India and China pulled back the troops. The overall sentiment improved. The thaw created conditions for normal business activity to resume. So China pushed for policy changes. They wanted India to relax investment rules, particularly for FDI. They wanted fewer barriers. But India is being cautious. In the month of April this year, Piyush Goyal spoke about this. He is India's Commerce Minister. He said India is not encouraging Chinese investment, and that it was not the government's priority to push for Chinese investment. So there is no change in policy per se. Only the process has been streamlined. Proposals are now being cleared within set deadlines. All backlogs have been cut, and the process is now faster and simpler. This couldn't have come at a better time. Global supply chains are being rewired. Chinese companies are looking for alternatives. They have confirmed export orders from the US. Chinese companies have confirmed orders, but with Donald Trump imposing high tariffs, these companies are exploring other options where they can produce their goods and supply to the United States. And one of those options could be India. So simpler rules could give India an edge. And it's not just China that stands to gain from this. Other partners will also benefit from easier processes, perhaps even more than China. In fact, on that count, Beijing is uneasy. The signs are hard to miss. In China, a new discourse is taking shape. Can Make in India replace Make in China? Can Apple replicate its China playbook in India? This is what they're discussing. Chinese commentators say that this is not possible. They cite India's labor unrest and its manufacturing gaps, but a lot of that criticism is unfounded. And some comments are blatantly racist, like this one. Who dares use a curry-flavored mobile phone? Comments like these expose China. This is not just economic anxiety, this is racism disguised as market analysis. Basically, China wants two things. They want access to India's market and a monopoly over its narrative. But they cannot have both. They cannot have a partnership while running a smear campaign. They cannot call for cooperation while questioning India's credibility. China cannot seek business deals while mocking India's manufacturing, or claim to be a partner while undermining India's rise. The double standard is stark as always, and that is why India is treading carefully. The response to China is not emotional, it is pragmatic. India is not rushing to embrace Beijing, nor is it slamming the door. It is opening the window that's just about enough. It is allowing investments where national interests align and keeping the guard up where security is at stake. In 2016, Donald Trump made a pitch to his voters. Don't trust mainstream politicians. You need an outsider, someone who can run the government like a business. 10 years later, he's still doing that, running the government like a for-profit. Except only his family seems to be making money. Take a look at this report. It focuses on the Trump Organization, which is the family's premier real estate company. They are doing more business than ever. Donald Trump won the US election in November 2024. Since then, the company has announced 12 international projects. Compare this to his last term, his first term in office. From 2016 to 2021, Trump's company announced just 2 overseas projects. This time, they have done 12 in 7 months, 12 projects. And what projects are we talking about? High-rise residential buildings, luxury golf courses, and high-end hotels. A lot of these projects are in the Gulf. Many of them also involve the governments of the region. And guess what? Trump's company does not pay for these projects. Their expansion is based on licensing. The actual construction is done by a local builder, but Trump lends it his brand name. Maybe Trump Towers, or Trump Golf Course, or Trump Hotels. That's how licensing works. And it's fetching him millions of dollars. Then comes his crypto investment. Let me show you a report in the US media. It says Trump is building a crypto empire out of thin air. And frankly, it's true. Trump was a huge crypto critic in his first term, but suddenly he's a crypto bro. His company is raising $2.5 billion to buy Bitcoin. At the same time, Trump is pushing Bitcoin from the White House. He has appointed a crypto czar. He's also created a strategic crypto reserve. So Donald Trump stands to benefit from his own policies as president. But guess who doesn't benefit? Other American companies. Trump's disruptive tactics are hurting businesses, especially his tariff policies. Look at this poll of 56 global companies. Out of them, 32 are located in the US. Donald Trump's tariffs have cost them $34 billion. This is mainly due to falling sales and higher costs. Experts say this is just a snapshot. Chances are the real figures are double or triple of what you're seeing. A lot of firms are also revising their growth projections. At least 42 companies have cut their forecast and 16 have withdrawn it. You will also see GDP rates fall. The OECD has come out with some numbers. OECD is the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. They have slashed their projection for the US from 2.8% to 1.6%. That is the growth projection. Global growth is also expected to slow. The initial forecast was 3.3%, but the new forecast is 2.9%. The thing is, it is hard to quantify this kind of impact because tariffs have ripple effects. They reduce sales, they affect supply chains, they slow down consumption. So it's impossible to calculate the exact cost of such policies. But here's what we can confirm. Amid all this churn, Donald Trump's own businesses are flourishing. Whether it's his real estate company or the social media company or the cryptocurrency company. In fact, his media firm is a prime example of what is wrong. It reported losses worth $400 million last year, yet look at the share prices. They are 118% up in the last 5 years. And that tells you the story. Trump's business gains are based on his political presence and policies. If you take that out, they may not survive. And don't take our word for it. Trump's companies have filed for bankruptcy 6 times. But the moment he entered politics, they started thriving. Something tells me that is not a coincidence. Now let's talk about Taiwan. It is preparing for a war that hopefully never comes. China is threatening the island. It is intensifying military drills and provocations, and Taiwan is boosting its defenses. It is taking some inspiration from Ukraine. Later this month, Taiwan will test a new weapon. It is small and unmanned, but it is built to strike. We're talking about kamikaze sea drones. Taiwan will test these drones. They're designed to detonate on impact. They explode when they hit a surface. They're like your regular drones, low cost, fast moving, and hard to detect. But these drones are also built to operate on the high seas. They're being produced as part of a special program, a program called the Kuai Chi Project. Basically, Taiwan is working on self-reliance. It is trying to develop its own defense technology. It doesn't want to rely on Western weapons alone. It wants homemade solutions tailored to Taiwan's geography and focused on tackling the threat from China. These kamikaze drones fit that description. They're equipped with precision-guided explosives. They will use artificial intelligence to lock in their targets, then navigate autonomously. In other words, these sea drones will not require a pilot. They will be difficult to hack. The drones are small in size, they're quick, so they can evade radars. And they can move even through shallow waters. Taiwan will test the prototype this month. If the drones pass the test, they will be mass-produced. Taiwan is looking to build as many as 200 units of these killer drones. So like most militaries in the world, Taiwan is turning to drones. And for them, it's part of a broader shift in strategy. They're rethinking their approach towards China. Yes, Taiwan needs big weapons to defend itself, but it won't be enough. Not against a force like the PLA, that's the People's Liberation Army, the Chinese military. It's the biggest military in the world in terms of manpower, the second biggest in terms of resources after the United States. This is what Taiwan is up against. So it is investing in asymmetric warfare, weapons that are smaller, smarter, and cheaper. Tools that can exploit vulnerabilities of aircraft carriers and ships. And this is a signal to Beijing. Taiwan is modernizing its defenses. It is learning from conflicts like Ukraine and innovating with remote-controlled weapons, AI-enabled systems, and new surveillance tools. In fact, Taiwan will spend over $1 billion on drones alone.
Starting next year and over the course of 5 years, the government will invest a budget of nearly $1 billion in the research and development of the drone industry, as well as in the strategic layout of the entire industrial supply chain.
Taiwan is ramping up its defenses, and the US is watching closely. They are, after all, Taiwan's largest arms suppliers, the Americans. So the island's principal security partner. Taiwan and the US have a deal, one that clearly states that if China attacks Taiwan, the US will defend it. Although there's also some ambiguity here, the US has never explicitly said that it will honor this commitment. But it is preparing for war and rallying regional allies to protect Taiwan.
Ultimately, a strong, resolute, and capable network of allies and partners is our key strategic advantage. China envies what we have together, and it sees what we can collectively bring to bear on defense. But it's up to all of us to ensure that we live up to that potential by investing.
Pete Hegseth says it is time to invest in better defenses. And that means arming Taiwan and giving them more advanced weapons. Reports say this is already being done. The US is planning to sell more weapons to Taiwan. During Trump's first term, the US sold arms worth more than $18 billion to Taiwan. Now, in his second term, Trump wants to do more. He wants more missiles, more drones, and more munitions for Taiwan. And needless to say, Taiwan would welcome that. As China increases military pressure on the island, Taiwan is left with only one option: stock up on defense supplies and hope it never needs them. Our next story is from West Africa, from the landlocked country of Mali, the 8th largest on the continent and currently ruled by a military junta. Mali is in the grip of violence again. In the last 2 days, there have been 2 terror attacks, first in a border town and then in the historic city of Timbuktu. The attacks were carried out by a group linked to the Al-Qaeda. They struck army bases and a military airport. At least 30 soldiers have died, along with more than a dozen assailants. The security situation is worsening in Mali and the wider Sahel region. Now, for perspective, Sahel accounts for more than half of all deaths from terrorism the world over. And the twin attacks in Mali are only making it worse. Here's a report.
This is Mali, a landlocked country in West Africa, home to about 24 million people. And it has witnessed twin terror attacks which have left dozens of people dead. The attacks happened over the past 2 days. First in the border town of Bulekassi and then in the historic city of Timbuktu. Both the attacks have been claimed by the JNIM. This stands for Jamaat Nasr al-Islam wal-Muslimin. JNIM is an Islamist group. It was formed in 2017 as a merger of several militant factions. It is linked to terror group Al-Qaeda. In fact, JNIM is West Africa's Al-Qaeda affiliate. On Sunday, it attacked the Malian town of Bulekassi, near the border with Burkina Faso. The target was an army base. Dozens of militants stormed the base. Mali's army defended it. But the seizure of the army base has left more than 30 soldiers dead. On Monday, JNIM's target was Timbuktu. Assailants arrived in vehicles packed with explosives. Residents heard gunfire and explosions and took shelter. As JNIM targeted the military in the city, explosives detonated close to the army camp. Then they attacked the military airport, which was hosting Russian mercenaries. Mali's army says that it repelled, quote-unquote, an infiltration attempt by terrorist fighters. 14 militants were killed and 31 suspects arrested. The army also seized weapons, vehicles and other items. But the ancient city is not new to violence. It has a bloody past. Timbuktu was captured by Islamist militants in 2012. They swept into the country and caused widespread destruction. But they were driven out in 2013 when the city was peacefully retaken with the support of the French military. It was deployed to halt the advance of terrorists in Mali. But then came a shift in 2020. Mali's military junta seized power in coups. It promised to restore stability, but instead it broke the country's traditional ties with its former colonial power. It expelled French troops and moved closer to Russia, relying on Russian mercenaries to counter terror threats. Since 2021, Russia's presence and influence has grown steadily in Mali. The junta and its allied mercenaries have been regularly accused of committing abuses against civilians. Meanwhile, the security situation has worsened in not just Mali, but also the wider Sahel region. It accounts for more than half of all deaths worldwide from terrorism. Armed groups have continued attacks in the region for months now, especially in Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger. Since the beginning of last month, more than 400 soldiers have been killed by militants. In January, the trio announced their exit from ECOWAS. This is a regional bloc. It stands for Economic Community of West African States, and it turned 50 this May. Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger announced their exit to form the Alliance of Sahel States or AES, partly to enhance military cooperation. But for now, progress is slow. The twin attacks on Mali are the latest sign of the worsening security situation in the country. While the military, the mercenaries and the terror groups jostle for power, innocent civilians continue to pay the price for it.
In the late 1990s, the internet felt like an uncharted city, chaotic and bursting with potential. There were plenty of search engines, but none of them was very efficient. So in 1998, two Stanford students launched a project, a plan to revolutionize how we search online. That idea became Google. And for the next 2 decades, it changed the internet. Google was like the front door to the web. Want to know the weather? Google it. Looking for the best sushi spot? Google it. Need an answer ASAP? Well, Google it. Google did not just define search, it owned it, so much so that Googling is now a verb. But like all empires, Google too was challenged, and that challenge arrived in 2022. Not as another search engine, but in the form of artificial intelligence. I'm talking about ChatGPT. It came 2 years ago, and now it is ruling the roost. ChatGPT registered 365 billion annual searches in 2024. 365 billion in 1 year. Do you know how much time it took Google to reach this? Around 11 years. Think of it as a milestone, 365 billion searches in 1 year. Google took 11 years to reach here. ChatGPT took 2 years. At this rate, ChatGPT is growing 5.5 times faster than Google. Although it's not a straight contest, the playing fields are completely different. Google launched in the late 90s. At that time, internet was a luxury for few. By contrast, ChatGPT came in a world where 5 billion people were online. So there is no comparison. But funny enough, that is the story. The internet has changed, and so has the search ecosystem. You see, traditional search used to be a list. You type a question, Google gives you a sea of blue links. You click, you skim, you go back and forth. It's like your own journey for information. Artificial intelligence is different. It gives you the whole answer. Want to know how to fix your basin? ChatGPT will tell you step by step. Want to understand the Israeli-Palestinian conflict? Perplexity will give you an overview in 30 seconds. Wondering what to gift your niece? Claude asks what are her interests and then offers 5 personalized suggestions. So with AI, search has become a dialogue, and that has changed everything. Also, this is not just about ChatGPT versus Google. This is about a whole landscape that is transforming. People are searching for products directly on Amazon. They're discovering recipes on TikTok. They're researching topics on AI apps. So there is no one way to search anymore. And that is where things get complicated. You see, billions of websites rely on traffic. This traffic comes from clicks, and clicks come from search. And that search, until now, meant Google. But AI search does not always send people links. AI reads the websites, skips the links, and just gives you the answer. And for publishers, it's a nightmare. If no one clicks through, how do writers make money? How do businesses get discovered? How do advertisers get seen? And no, this is not just about websites. Google itself is staring at a business model problem. Almost all its revenue comes from ads. That's a multi-billion-dollar empire, and that empire could be at risk now. So is this the beginning of the end for Google? Well, not quite. 70% of search queries are still on Google, but it is being forced to evolve, and evolve fast. Google is already rolling out AI overviews. They appear on top of the searches now. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Google is being reactive, not proactive. It's playing catch-up. Luckily for Google, AI can be wrong sometimes. Sometimes AI gets facts wrong. Sometimes it makes up things entirely. And that is called hallucinating, like making up a historical event that never happened. AI does that. There's also the question of where these answers are coming from. In Google, you see sources. In AI-generated answers, that is not always the case. It doesn't always give you the source. There's a growing fear that we are entering a black box internet. Basically, you're told the answer, but you're not shown how we got there. And this can be a terrifying prospect. So to sum it up, here's a way to think about it. The internet used to be like a giant library. You went in, you picked a few books, you read through them. Google was like the librarian that led you to those books. AI, on the other hand, is like a hotel concierge. You walk up and ask a question, and they give you an answer. That sounds great, but it's also a little risky. The concierge might have a bias. They may also get it wrong. So the bottom line is this. We are not just changing search engines, we are changing how we think about finding information. And if Google does not want to be the next Yahoo, it will have to stop playing defense. Because in this new world, whoever answers best wins. Now let's talk about the Wuhan virus. It is back in the news. I'm sure you've seen the headlines. India is witnessing a spike in cases. As of today, we have more than 4,000 active cases in the country. And in the last 24 hours, more deaths have been reported. At least 30 deaths in this current wave have been reported, although health officials insist that these deaths were not linked to the virus and that there is no need to panic. But the courts are having none of it. They have flagged the spike. They've asked for a report from the government. Meanwhile, across Asia, major cities are witnessing a rise in cases. In places like Hong Kong and Singapore, health authorities are advising booster shots. Experts say it's not the virus that is driving this current surge, it is the waning immunity of people. Our next report explains.
The Wuhan virus is not done with us yet. The surge in infections across India continues. Active cases have now crossed 4,000. Kerala is reporting the highest number of cases, followed by Maharashtra, Gujarat, and New Delhi. The health ministry has confirmed 5 deaths in just the last 24 hours. Since January, at least 37 lives have been lost. But officials say there's no reason to panic just yet. They insist these deaths were not directly caused by the Wuhan virus. But that doesn't mean we should let our guard down. The world is witnessing a fresh wave of cases. It is not just India that's alone. From Singapore to Hong Kong, cases are climbing across Asia. In both places, local authorities have issued fresh health advisories. The virus, they say, is still circulating and health officials are encouraging booster shots. Even China and Thailand are taking new precautions. The concern is not over a new variant. There is no evidence that the current strains are more dangerous. But experts believe immunity within the population is fading, and that's bringing the virus back into circulation. In India, the most vulnerable remain the same. Citizens over 60 years of age. And those living with conditions like diabetes, hypertension, heart or kidney disease. For them, the Wuhan virus is still a serious threat. And the courts have taken note. The Delhi High Court has raised concerns. It has asked the center to submit a status report on sample collection, testing centers, and how samples are being transported. Because, in the words of the court, the next pandemic is already active in the community. So far, the government has not brought back any restrictions. There are no mask mandates or public closures. But experts are advising precautions, especially for the most vulnerable. They should wear a mask in crowded spaces, maintain hand hygiene, and if they feel sick, stay at home and isolate. These are not extraordinary measures. They are lessons from the pandemic, simple steps that save lives. Because even as the world moves on, the virus has not. And in a country as large and dense as India, vigilance is the only real defense.
Think back to the last time you quit a job. And let's be honest, once you decide to leave, there are a dozen different scenarios in your mind. How would you go? Maybe you imagine a graceful goodbye, walking out on your last day with a smile. Or maybe you picture flipping your desk on the way out, or an explosive exit interview, even tossing your badge Bollywood style. You may not actually do it, but the thought crosses a lot of minds. We say don't do it, not because it's impolite, but because it's unwise. When you walk out of a job, do not slam the door behind you. Do not burn bridges with your old employer because you may have to come back. And I say this because this is the year of boomerang hiring. What does that mean? What is boomerang hiring? It's when someone leaves a company and then comes back later to work there again, usually between 18 to 24 months. These employees are like a boomerang. They went out and then came back. Why would people do that? From the employee's perspective, there could be a number of reasons. Maybe it's about growth, maybe they picked up new skills, or maybe they finally realized that the grass is not greener on the other side. As for the company, they're hiring with a head start. You see, rehiring someone saves trouble. There are fewer onboarding headaches. By some estimates, almost 60% companies prefer boomerang hiring. 60%. Let me show you the US jobs report. This is from March 2025, March this year. It says 35% of the new hires are old employees. This is the highest rate since 2018. In tech, that number is a staggering 68%. 68% of all new hires are returning employees. Compare that to last year when the figure was around 34%. So it has almost doubled in a year. And that brings us to the question, what exactly is going on? To answer that, we'll go back in time, when we had the Great Resignation. This was just a few years ago. People were quitting their jobs left, right, and center, and employers were desperate to hire. Often they picked the next best resume. They were willing to train as needed. Fast forward to now, and the hiring spree has cooled. The economy is still struggling, employers are choosier, and suddenly the familiar feels safe, even comforting. Enter the boomerang hire. In this slower, more uncertain market, familiarity becomes a competitive advantage. In fact, some Indian firms report a 100% success rate for boomerang hires. For new hires, it is closer to 75%. But is this a good trend? Well, yes, boomerang hiring makes sense. It reduces cost of training, it lowers risk, and in industries like tech and media, where niche skills are hard to find, it can also be a lifeline. Having said that, this practice is not perfect. If companies only bring back old employees, they risk building an echo chamber, hiring the same voices, from the same backgrounds, and with the same perspectives. Over time, that can kill innovation. Worse, it can make it harder for new, diverse talent to break in. For employees, there's the danger of over-romanticizing the past. Sometimes people forget why they left in the first place. A toxic boss does not get better just because you're nostalgic. So yes, boomerang hiring can be efficient, but it's not a cure-all. Also, this trend is part of a bigger shift, a shift in how we think about work. For decades, we imagined careers as straight lines. But that model is starting to crack. Today, careers loop or zigzag. People leave for new experiences, new cities, new industries. Often they circle back, not because they failed, but because they wanted something different. And companies are finally catching on. They're building corporate alumni networks, almost like colleges do. They're doing stay interviews, interviews to say, please stay with us. And they're hiring people who just hit pause. I guess the rules are changing. And for better or worse, the job market is getting more and more personal. So here's some unsolicited advice. Do not burn the bridge on your way out. That dramatic exit may sound very satisfying. It might even feel good for 5 minutes, but it could cost you 5 years of future opportunities. Your past employer might become your future one. Or they might refer you or partner with you at some point. The line between past and future is thinner than it used to be. How you leave is just as important as how you arrive. So say your goodbyes with grace. You never know when you'll boomerang. First, it was South Korea. Now the curse of the Dior bag has claimed another victim, Mongolia. This is a country in East Asia. It is sandwiched between China and Russia. And now it has been thrown into a political crisis, a crisis sparked by the Prime Minister's son and his girlfriend. They posted pictures on social media showing off their lavish lifestyle, their holidays, their luxury cars and their designer bags, including, of course, a Dior bag. And this angered the public. People in Mongolia are battling a cost of living crisis. So for weeks, they've taken to the streets, they've protested, and finally they have forced the Prime Minister to resign. Here's a report.
Sandwiched between China and Russia, Mongolia is a landlocked country of just about 3.5 million people. And it has been thrust into a political crisis with weeks of protests, followed by the resignation of the country's Prime Minister, Lafsanamsai Oyurdin. And this is all thanks to designer handbags. The crisis was triggered by social media posts. Recently, some pictures went viral. They showed the Prime Minister's 23-year-old son's lavish engagement, a fancy proposal, an expensive ring, luxury cars, and designer handbags. Specifically, a Dior handbag, which Oyurdin's son and the son's girlfriend flaunted on social media. And you can guess what happened next. Suspicion grew. People wondered how the son got so wealthy. After all, Oyurdin has often spoken about being from a not-so-wealthy family. So people questioned how his family could afford such luxury. This sparked an anti-corruption investigation and weeks of mass protests.
It is unfair that the Prime Minister's son and his girlfriend possess a lavish lifestyle, while I'm buying my bag from a thrift shop.
This is a lot like what happened in South Korea. Last year, hidden camera footage showed South Korea's First Lady Kim Kyon-hee accepting a $2,200 luxury designer handbag, a Dior handbag. This led to a major controversy dubbed the Dior bag scandal. It caused a political headache for the now ousted president Yoon Suk-yeol. And today, the country has voted for its new president. And now, the curse of the Dior bag scandal has hit Mongolia. While Oyurdin has denied wrongdoing, hundreds of protesters, most of them youngsters, have been taking to the streets for about 2 weeks now. They've gathered in the capital of Ulaanbaatar, in front of the government palace almost daily, and demanded his resignation. So on Tuesday, lawmakers held a confidence vote. It was a secret ballot of the parliament's 126 members, and Oyurdin needed the support of at least 64. But out of the 88 lawmakers who took part, only 44 voted for him. So he has lost the confidence vote and stepped down as Prime Minister. Celebrations have now broken out on the streets. The youth see this as a victory.
The success of this protest came from the unity of the youth and their commitment to keeping the rally peaceful and organized.
I hope to have a new PM who truly values human rights and freedoms. I want a society where our life gets better if we work hard and pay our debts.
After all, the protests were not just about a Dior bag or a luxury car. They were symptomatic of a disconnect between the ruling elite and the common people. For decades now, Mongolia has struggled with corruption. In 2022, protests erupted over a corruption scandal involving the alleged theft of about $13 billion worth of coal. Last year, the United States sought to forfeit 2 apartments in New York bought by former Prime Minister Su-57. They were allegedly bought using stolen mining funds. Mongolia has seen worsening corruption since Oyurdin came into power. Last year, the country ranked 114 out of 180 countries in terms of government transparency. In recent months, other issues have piled up as well. The cost of living has skyrocketed. Inflation is soaring. Pollution is choking the capital, which is home to half the country's population. And amid this, the Prime Minister's son shows off his lavish lifestyle. It struck a nerve especially for a population that's not just living paycheck to paycheck, but buried under debt.
It's almost 10 p.m. in India. The IPL final is nearing its completion. But if you're still watching us, thank you. We appreciate the loyalty. We also have a gift for your cricket crazy friends. I'm sure they must be tense right now, especially the long-time fans of Bengaluru and Punjab. As the tension mounted, the internet came up with some memes to ease the vibes. We've compiled the best ones for you. Make sure you send these to your cricket crazy folks. And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. Ukraine blows up a key bridge linking Russia with Crimea with underwater explosives. Greenpeace activists kidnap a Macron wax figure to protest against trade with Russia. And millions gather in China for the annual Dragon Boat Festival. Finally, we are also taking you back in history. On this day in 1989, a crackdown began at China's Tiananmen Square. By late night and early morning of June 4th, Chinese troops and tanks stormed the square, firing on unarmed civilians and crushing the demonstration. Hundreds of people were killed, thousands were arrested. The Tiananmen Square massacre is one of the deadliest episodes in modern Chinese history. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.